The council chamber stretched wider than any cathedral built by human hands. Captain Day stood at the edge of the speaking platform, watching as 47 different species filled the curved seats that rose up into the shadows. Some breathed oxygen like him, others existed in sealed tanks of methane or swam through fields of pure energy. After 200 years, humanity still felt like children playing dress-up at the adults' table. Ambassador Tay stepped forward, his formal robes catching the strange purple light that filled the chamber. He had practiced this speech for months. His voice carried through the translation fields that made every word understandable to every mind present. Honorable members of the Concordat, humanity requests access to the Vault of Primordials. We believe the knowledge contained there could help us better understand the fundamental forces of our universe. We ask this not as a privilege, but as fellow members of this great alliance. The response came immediately. Havelthir rose from the highest tier, its crystalline body refracting light into painful patterns. When it spoke, the sound hummed through every bone in Day's body. The Velthir had no mouths, no vocal cords. They simply made the air itself vibrate with their thoughts. The humans demonstrate their youth once again. The vault contains knowledge from the first ones, those who shaped reality before any of us existed. To access such power requires resonance maturity. Humanity lacks this fundamental quality. Another voice joined in, this one from a flowing blob of living metal. Humans rely on mathematics, on written symbols, on crude tools and machines. They do not feel the harmony of existence. They cannot sing with the universe. Dave felt his jaw tighten. He had heard these arguments before. Every species in the Concordat could manipulate the fundamental forces through what they called resonance. They could move objects without touching them, bend light, even slow time in small areas. All of it came naturally to them, like breathing. For humans, physics was something you studied, calculated, and built machines to harness. Ambassador Tay tried again. We may approach understanding differently, but our methods have proven effective. Human technology has contributed significantly to... The Velthir cut him off with a wave of harmonics that made Day's teeth ache. Your machines are toys. Children playing with blocks while the adults reshape worlds. The vault is sealed to you. This decision is final. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement. Day looked around at the assembled species, seeing the same dismissive expressions on faces, energy fields, and consciousness patterns. To them, humanity would always be the species that had to build spaceships instead of flying through space on wings of pure thought. The ones who needed computers instead of calculating trajectories in their minds. Dr. Hannah Rim sat in the observation gallery, her fingers dancing across a holographic display that only she could see. While the council argued politics, she was doing what humans did best. She was measuring, calculating, and finding patterns where others saw only chaos. For 15 years, Hannah had studied the way other species used resonance. She had recorded thousands of hours of Velthir moving objects, Karathi bending light, and Morvine manipulating gravity. Everyone assumed these abilities were beyond human understanding, gifts granted by evolution over millions of years. But Hannah saw something else. She saw mathematics, beautiful, perfect, predictable mathematics. Every time a Velthir lifted an object, quantum fluctuations followed a specific pattern. When the Karathi bent light, the photons shifted according to rules that could be expressed in equations. The resonance that seemed like magic was actually physics operating at a level most species experienced but never consciously understood. As she watched the Velthir High Council, member gestured dismissively at Ambassador Tay. Hannah's display showed the energy patterns flowing through the chamber. The Velthir was using resonance to amplify its voice, to make its presence more imposing, and Hannah could see exactly how it was doing it. The wavelengths, the frequencies, the precise quantum states being manipulated. She leaned forward, her heart racing. If these patterns could be measured, they could be understood. If they could be understood, they could be replicated. Not through millions of years of evolution, but through human ingenuity and determination. Captain Day found Hannah in her laboratory aboard the Prometheus Dawn 3 hours after the disastrous council meeting. The ship hung in orbit around the Concordat station, one of hundreds of vessels from across the galaxy. But unlike the others, which were grown, manifested, or dreamed into existence, the Prometheus Dawn had been built. Every rivet, every wire, every circuit board had been placed by human hands and human minds. They humiliated us, Day said, not bothering with greetings. 2 centuries of membership, and they still treat us like we're barely sentient. Hannah didn't look up from her screens. They're afraid. Afraid? Of us? Dee laughed bitterly. We're the weakest species in the Concordat. We can't do any of the things they do naturally. Exactly. Hana finally turned to face him. Her eyes held an intensity that Day had learned to recognize. It was the look she got when she had discovered something important. Captain, I've been analyzing resonance for 15 years. I thought I was trying to understand how they do what they do. But I've realized something. They don't understand it themselves. What do you mean? When you breathe, do you think about the gas exchange in your lungs? The oxygen binding to hemoglobin? The cellular respiration? Hana pulled up a display showing complex wave patterns. They use resonance the same way. It's instinct. Evolution gave them this ability and they just use it. But they don't understand the underlying principles. Day stepped closer to the display. And you do? I'm starting to. Hana's fingers traced patterns in the light. It's all mathematics, Captain. Beautiful, elegant mathematics. The universe runs on rules, on laws that can be expressed in numbers and equations. What they call resonance is just conscious manipulation of quantum fields. They evolved to do it automatically. But she smiled. We can learn to do it through pure understanding. That's impossible, is it? We built fusion reactors by understanding nuclear physics. We created artificial gravity by understanding relativistic mechanics. We crossed the stars by understanding the mathematics of space-time. Hana's voice grew passionate. Every other species does these things naturally. They fly, they communicate telepathically, they survive in vacuum, and we matched them all by understanding how these things work and building solutions. Dave felt something stirring in his chest. Hope, maybe? Or defiance? What are you suggesting? The vault of primordials is closed to us. Fine. But the universe itself is an open book for anyone willing to read it. Hana brought up star charts showing regions of unexplored space. There are places where reality is thin, where the underlying structure is exposed. If we could study those regions, if we could see the fundamental code that everything runs on, we could learn to speak it ourselves. Day finished. Not through instinct, but through understanding. The Concordat thinks we're naive children playing with toys. Hana's smile turned sharp. Let's show them what children can do when they ask the right questions. Captain Day looked at the star charts. At the dangerous regions marked in red, at the opportunities everyone else was too afraid or too comfortable to explore. The Concordat had dismissed humanity. They had denied access to knowledge. They had declared humans too primitive to understand the deeper truths of reality. They were about to learn a hard lesson. You should never underestimate a species whose first response to mystery isn't acceptance, but the question, why? Prepare the ship, Day said. We're going to the void margins. Behind them, through the viewport, the Concordat station glowed with the resonance of 1,000 species, all comfortable in their power, all secure in their superiority. None of them noticed the small human vessel breaking orbit, heading toward the edges of known space. None of them suspected that humanity was about to teach the universe a new language. The void margins existed at the edge of charted space, where reality grew unstable and even the bravest species refused to venture. Captain Day watched through the viewport as normal space gave way to something else. Stars flickered in and out of existence. Light bent in impossible directions. Space itself seemed to breathe. All readings are off the scale, reported Engineer Wu from his station. He was a thin man with quick hands and a mind that understood machines better than people. Gravity is fluctuating. Time dilation is inconsistent. Sir, this place breaks every rule in the book. That's exactly why we're here, Dr. Hana said from her position at the science console. Where the rules break down, we can see what's underneath. The Prometheus dawn moved slowly through the distorted space. Every system on the ship was pushed to its limits. The hull groaned under stresses that shouldn't exist. Lights flickered as power systems struggled to maintain stability. Dr. Sora, the ship's expert on alien cultures, stood beside Hana's station. She was shorter than most of the crew, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Other species avoid this region. Their instinctive fear of resonance disruption keeps them away. But we don't rely on resonance so we can go where they can't. Everyone secure your stations, Day ordered. This is going to get rougher. He was right. The ship shuddered as they penetrated deeper into the void margins. Outside, space no longer looked like space. It was a churning sea of probability, where matter and energy danced between states. Particles appeared and disappeared. Time ran backwards in some areas and too fast in others. Hana's instruments recorded everything. Patterns emerged from the chaos. Mathematical structures that existed beneath the ordinary laws of physics. It was like seeing the code behind a computer program, the fundamental instructions that made everything work. "I'm getting something," Hana said, her voice tight with excitement. "There's a substrate layer. Beneath normal space-time, beneath quantum fields, there's another level entirely. It's computational. Reality is running on rules like a massive calculation." Wu looked up from his engineering console. "Are you saying the universe is a computer program?" "Not exactly, but it follows syntactical rules. There's a structure, a language that determines how particles behave, how forces interact, how time flows." Hana's fingers flew across her controls. "If we can read this language, we might be able to speak it." For 3 months, the Prometheus dawn remained in the void margins. The crew worked in shifts, sleeping little, driven by the magnitude of what they were discovering. Hana led a team that grew to include every scientist on the ship. They mapped the substrate layer, identifying patterns and rules, but there was a cost. The crew began experiencing strange effects. Wu reported seeing numbers floating in the air, equations that described the motion of every object around him. Zora claimed she could hear the mathematics, a constant whisper of calculations running in the background of reality. Hana felt it worst of all. She would look at a coffee cup and see the quantum states of every atom. She would watch a person walk and perceive the gravitational waves their mass created. Reality was becoming transparent to her, showing the machinery beneath. "We're changing," she told Captain Day during one of their private meetings. "Our brains are adapting to perceive the substrate directly. It's like learning a new sense. Is it dangerous? I don't know, but it's irreversible." Hana rubbed her temples. "I can't unsee it now. The universe is talking all the time and I can hear it." Despite the risks, the research continued. Hana developed what she called syntax chains, sequences of mathematical operations that could manipulate the substrate layer. In theory, they could rewrite the rules of physics in a localized area. The first test was simple. Hana created a syntax chain designed to change the color of light. The team gathered in the main laboratory, watching as she activated the sequence on her computer. Nothing happened for a moment. Then a beam of red laser light began to shift. It turned orange, then yellow, then green. The frequency was changing without any physical filter or medium. Hana was rewriting the properties of the photons themselves. "Impossible," Wu whispered. "No," Hana said, her eyes gleaming. "Just improbable until now." The next test was more ambitious. Hana created a syntax chain to slow time in a contained field. She activated it over a glass of water. The crew watched as a drop fell from a pipette above the glass. The drop slowed as it entered the field, crawling through the air like a creature swimming through honey. It took 3 minutes for the drop to reach the water. "Time dilation," Sora said. "Without gravity, without velocity, without any of the usual causes." "Because we're not bending space-time," Hana explained. "We're editing the rules that determine how fast time flows. We're telling reality to run that calculation differently." Captain Day felt a chill run down his spine. "Hana, do you understand what this means? This is what the concordate species do with resonance, but you're doing it consciously, mathematically. You can explain every step." "Better than that," Hana said. "I can teach it." "Resonance is limited by biology. Only certain species can do it, but this, anyone who can understand mathematics can learn this. Any species, any individual who's willing to study." The implications hung heavy in the air. If humanity could master this, they wouldn't just match the other concordate species. They would surpass them, because understanding could be shared, taught, and improved in ways that instinct never could. But their time in the void margins was running out. The ship's systems were failing under the constant stress. More concerning, long-range sensors detected ships approaching, Felthier ships moving with purpose. "They found us," Day said, reading the tactical display. "Judgment fleet configuration. They're not here to talk." Wu pulled up the communication logs. "We've been broadcasting our research data back to Earth. Standard science protocol. But that means the Concordate has been intercepting it too. They know what we've discovered." Sora's expression was grim. "The Velthir have always been the guardians of the Vault of Primordials. They control access to deep knowledge. If humanity has found another path to that knowledge, a path they can't control, they'll try to stop us," Day finished. He looked at Hana. "How much of your research is complete?" "Enough to prove the concept. Enough to show that it works. Hana met his eyes, but not enough to defend against a fleet. The Velthir ships emerged from normal space like sharks rising from dark water. 7 massive vessels, each one grown from living crystal and powered by pure resonance. They surrounded the Prometheus Dawn, cutting off any escape. A message came through. The harmonics translated into human words. Unregistered research vessel. You have violated the fundamental laws of the Concordat. You have attempted to consciously manipulate the substrate layer. This is forbidden. Surrender your research and prepare to be detained. Captain Day stood on his bridge, looking at the overwhelming force surrounding his ship. The Prometheus Dawn was a research vessel, not a warship. They had no weapons that could scratch a Velthir hull. By any reasonable assessment, they had already lost. But Day wasn't thinking like a military tactician. He was thinking like a human. And humans had never won by being stronger. They won by being smarter, Hana, he said quietly. Can your syntax chains affect their ships? I don't know. I've only tested small-scale applications. A whole ship? That would require calculations I haven't even attempted. Can you try? Hana looked at her screens, at the mathematical patterns she had been mapping for months. She thought about the Concordat dismissing humanity, about being told they were too primitive to understand. She thought about the substrate layer, that beautiful foundation of reality that spoke in the language of pure mathematics. Give me 2 hours, she said. Wu moved to her station. Tell me what you need. Every computer on this ship. Every processor, every calculation core. We're going to need massive computing power. Outside, the Velthir fleet waited with the patience of beings who had dominated the galaxy for millennia. They had no doubt about the outcome. Humans were weak, their technology crude, their understanding limited. Inside the Prometheus Dawn, Hana worked with desperate speed, writing syntax chains that grew more complex with each iteration. She was preparing to do something no one had ever attempted. She was going to speak to the universe in its own language, and she was going to teach it new words. The 2 hours passed like seconds. Hana barely noticed the time, lost in mathematics that described reality itself. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. Everyone knew what was at stake. If this failed, they would be captured or destroyed. If it succeeded, everything would change. Velthir fleet is charging weapons, reported the tactical officer. Energy signatures consistent with resonance cannons. Captain Day kept his voice calm. Hana, we're out of time. Almost there. Her fingers moved across the holographic interface faster than seemed possible. Wu, I need you to route all available power to the main computer core. If I do that, shields will drop, Wu said. We won't need shields. Not if this works. Day made the decision. Do it. The Prometheus Dawn's defensive systems went dark. On the Velthir ship's sensors detected the change. The Judgment Fleet commander, High Harmonist Krell, felt satisfaction resonate through its crystalline body. The humans were giving up, but then something strange happened. Space around the Prometheus Dawn began to shimmer, not with energy weapons or defensive fields, with something else, something that made Krell's resonant senses scream warnings it didn't understand. Hana activated her syntax chain. The calculations she had written spread out from the ship's computers, propagating through the substrate layer like ripples in water. She wasn't generating energy or force. She was rewriting the local rules of physics. The Velthir fired their resonance cannons. Beams of pure harmonic force capable of shattering asteroids converged on the human ship. And then the impossible happened. The beams curved. They looped back on themselves like rivers returning to their source. The attacks that should have destroyed the Prometheus Dawn instead flowed backward, returning to the ships that fired them. The Velthir vessels shuddered as their own weapons struck their hulls. What is this? Krell's harmonic voice filled every communication channel. What have you done? Captain Day opened a return channel. We spoke in the language of creation, and we asked reality politely to be uncooperative with your violence. On the bridge, Sora watched her instruments with wide eyes. The substrate layer around our ship has been modified. Aggressive intent creates localized entropy. Any attack generates a causal loop that returns force to its origin. It's brilliant. It's insane, Wu muttered. We've created a zone where the universe itself won't allow violence. Hana slumped in her chair, exhausted. It won't last long. Maybe an hour before reality reasserts its normal rules, but it's enough to prove we can do this. The Velthir fleet pulled back, regrouping. Krell had lived for 3,000 years and had never encountered anything like this. Humans didn't have resonance abilities. They were supposed to be limited by their crude technology and mathematical thinking. Yet somehow they had done what even the ancient Velthir could not. They had consciously rewritten the fundamental laws. Ambassador Tay's voice came through from the Concordat station. Prometheus Dawn, please respond. We're detecting massive spatial distortions. What's happening out there? Day filled him in quickly. Tay's response was a long silence, then, you've actually done it. You've matched their resonance abilities through pure mathematics. We've done more than match them, Day said. We've surpassed them. Because we understand what we're doing. We can teach it, improve it, and share it. Another voice broke into the channel. Admiral Na, commander of Earth's defense fleet. Captain Day, I'm tracking the Velthir fleet's movements. They're calling for reinforcements. This is about to become much bigger. She was right. Within hours, the news spread through the Concordat like wildfire. Humanity had discovered how to manipulate the substrate layer through conscious mathematical calculation. The younger species demanded to learn these techniques. The elder species called emergency council sessions. And in the depths of space, the Velthir hegemony made a decision. This knowledge could not be allowed to spread. If every species could learn to manipulate reality through understanding, rather than evolved ability, the entire power structure of the galaxy would collapse. They had spent millennia maintaining their position through control of resonance knowledge. Humanity threatened everything. Back on the Concordat station, Ambassador Tay stood before an emergency session of the Council. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear this. Members of the Concordat, Tay began. For 200 years, humanity has been told we lack resonance maturity. We were denied access to deep knowledge. We were treated as primitives who rely on crude mathematics and machines. And you proved us right, Krell's harmonics echoed through the chamber. You have violated the most fundamental law. The substrate layer must never be consciously manipulated. The first ones learned this truth the hard way. They tried to reshape reality and nearly destroyed the universe in the process. Tay held up a data chip. Dr. Hannah Rim's research. She's discovered something the Concordat has either forgotten or deliberately hidden. The substrate layer isn't just accessible through instinct. It follows rules, beautiful mathematical rules. And the first ones didn't fail because they tried to understand it. They failed because they didn't understand it well enough. A member of the Victar species, a being of flowing energy named Thren, spoke up. I have reviewed the human research. It is methodical, careful, and includes extensive safety protocols. They approach the substrate like engineers, not sorcerers. Perhaps that is exactly what we need. Heresy, Krell boomed. The vault of primordials contains the warnings. The first one's message was clear. Do not seek to understand creation. Do not attempt to speak its language. Accept what evolution has given you and go no further. Tay smiled. Is that what the message says? Or is that what you've told everyone it says? Because according to the data we've intercepted, the first one's message might say something very different. The chamber erupted in chaos. Half the species present had never questioned the Velthir's interpretation of the vault's contents. Now doubt spread like poison through their certainty. Dr. Hannah, still aboard the Prometheus Dawn, worked with a growing sense of urgency. Her team had detected something in the substrate layer itself. Echo signatures as if consciousness had left fingerprints in the foundation of reality. And these fingerprints weren't random. They formed patterns, messages encoded at the deepest possible level. It's the first ones, she told Captain Day. They didn't just leave warnings, they left teachings, instructions hidden in the quantum foam itself, invisible to anyone who only experiences the substrate through instinct. You have to be looking with conscious understanding to see them. What do they say? Hannah pulled up the decoded message on her screen. Let understanding, not instinct, guide the worthy. We shaped reality through knowledge, not through biological gifts. Our mistake was not that we tried to learn, but that we were careless with what we learned. Be better than we were, be wiser, and teach this to all who have the courage to understand. Day felt chills run down his spine. The Concordat has been built on a lie. The first ones wanted their knowledge shared, not hidden. And the Velthir knew it, Sora added. She had been researching the hegemony's history. They were the first species to access the vault after the first ones vanished. They translated the messages however they wanted, shaped the narrative to maintain their power. Knowledge is power, and they've monopolized it for millions of years. Admiral Na's ships arrived at the void margins, a defensive fleet to protect the Prometheus Dawn. But when they emerged from faster-than-light travel, they found themselves facing not just the Velthir Judgment Fleet but a gathering armada. 20 ships, 50, 100. The Velthir had called every ally, every species that benefited from the current power structure. Na opened a channel to Captain Day. "I hope you have more tricks up your sleeve. We're outnumbered 10-1. Day looked at Hana. She nodded tiredly. "I can create a larger field. Protect the whole fleet, but it will take everything our computers have. Do it." As the defensive field expanded, something unexpected happened. Ships from some of the younger concordate species broke formation. They moved to join the human fleet, declaring that they wanted access to the substrate knowledge. The Victor sent 3 vessels. The Morvine sent 5. Even some young Velthir, rebels who had grown tired of their elders' control, defected. The galaxy was choosing sides, and in that moment, everyone realized the truth. This wasn't about one human ship anymore. This was about the future of civilization itself. Would knowledge be hoarded by the powerful, or shared with all who sought understanding? High Harmonious Krell made its decision. If reason wouldn't work, force would. The Velthir fleet began charging their most powerful weapons, preparing to sweep the human position with enough resonance energy to shatter planets. But before they could fire, another message arrived. From Earth, from the human's homeworld itself, and it made Krell's crystalline body vibrate with something it hadn't felt in 3,000 years. Fear. The message from Earth was simple and terrifying. We've been listening. We've been learning. And we've been preparing. While the Prometheus Dawn had been conducting research in the void margins, they had been transmitting their findings back home. Every discovery, every breakthrough, every syntax chain Hana created had been received by the brightest minds on Earth. And those minds had not been idle. Dr. Jin, a linguist working in Earth's Quantum Research Institute, had made a breakthrough that Hana herself hadn't seen. If the substrate layer was like a computer program, then it had grammar. It had verb tenses, conditional statements, and ways to describe not just what was, but what could be. We can write in the past, present, and future tense, Jin had explained in his transmission. We can create if-then statements at the level of physics itself. We're not just reading the universe's code anymore. We're learning to write new chapters. High Harmonist Krell received this information and made a calculation. The humans aboard the Prometheus Dawn were researchers, pioneers, but ultimately limited by their single ship. Earth, however, was a whole world of 8 billion humans, all with that peculiar ability to ask why and refuse to accept mystery as an answer. If Earth was allowed to continue this research, if humanity was given time to fully master the tongue of creation, they would become unstoppable, not through military might, but through understanding so complete that they could reshape reality itself. Krell made the ancient decision of all tyrants throughout history: destroy the threat before it grows. The Velthir fleet abandoned the standoff at the void margins. They entered faster than light travel, heading directly for Sol System, for Earth. Other elder species, those who understood what was at stake, sent their own fleets to join the attack. Admiral Na watched them go and felt her blood turn cold. They're going to attack our homeworld. Captain Day's response was immediate. Recall all human ships. Every vessel, military or civilian, returns to Earth now. The Prometheus Dawn jumped to faster-than-light travel along with Admiral Na's fleet. But they were hours behind the Velthir Armada, hours that might make all the difference. On Earth, the warning arrived with enough time to evacuate the cities. Billions of humans looked up at their sky and waited to see if their world would survive the day. In underground bunkers, in orbital stations, in deep space habitats, humanity held its breath. The Velthir fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sol System. 200 ships, the largest battle fleet assembled in 1,000 years. Their resonance weapons charged, ready to reduce Earth's surface to molten glass. High Harmonist Krell sent one final message to the planet below. You forced this choice. You refused to remain in your place. You sought knowledge that should have remained hidden. Now you will learn the price of ambition. The fleet advanced toward Earth, and then the ships began to slow, not because of weapons fire or defensive shields, because space itself was becoming uncooperative. Navigation systems failed. Faster-than-light drives refused to engage. Weapons targeting sensors showed impossible readings. One Velthier captain reported that his ship was moving backward, even though his engines pushed forward. Dr. Jin and his team had spent months preparing for this moment. Every satellite orbiting Earth had been converted into a distributed computing node. Every computer on the planet's surface had been linked into the network. The entire system of Earth had become a massive calculator, running syntax chains so complex that they transformed the space around the planet into something unprecedented. Earth didn't have defensive shields. It had rewritten the rules of physics in its entire orbital sphere. Aggressive intent created paradoxes. Ships trying to approach Earth found their trajectory calculations failing, as if mathematics itself refused to help them attack. Weapons fire entered causal loops, striking backwards through time to hit nothing. Resonance beams that should have burned atmospheres instead converted to harmless light shows. "What have they done?" one of Krell's officers asked, its harmonic voice filled with confusion and fear. "They've made war impossible," Krell realized. Not through superior weapons, but by changing what war means in this region of space. The Prometheus dawn arrived to find the Velthier fleet in disarray. Ships floated helplessly, their crews unable to comprehend what was happening. The humans hadn't destroyed them. They had simply made the universe stop cooperating with violence. Captain Day opened a communication channel to the fleet. "High Harmonist Krell, you came here to destroy us because you were afraid. Afraid that we would share knowledge you've kept hidden. Afraid that other species would learn what we've learned. Afraid that your power, built on millions of years of monopoly, would crumble. You don't understand what you've done," Krell responded. "The substrate layer is not meant to be consciously manipulated. Every change you make creates instability. You'll tear reality apart." Dr. Hana's voice joined the channel. "We've read the actual messages from the first ones, not your edited versions. They didn't fail because they tried to understand creation. They failed because they were reckless. They changed things without safety protocols, without testing, without wisdom. We're different," Dr. Jin added from Earth. "We test everything. We build in redundancies. We approach this like engineers, not gods. Every syntax chain we write includes error checking, automatic rollbacks, and stability verification." "Your caution won't matter," Krell insisted. "One mistake, one miscalculation, and you'll create a cascade failure that spreads across the universe. Then help us," Ambassador Tay said. He had been listening from the Concordate station. "Instead of trying to suppress this knowledge, help us use it wisely." The first ones wanted understanding to spread. They left instructions, not warnings. They believed that conscious comprehension was the next step in universal evolution. The standoff continued. The Velthier fleet couldn't attack and couldn't leave. Earth's modified space held them in a bubble where aggression was impossible. Hours passed. Then Day's other species began to arrive. Not with fleets, but with delegations. The younger species sent scientists and researchers asking to learn. Some of the elder species sent observers, cautiously curious about what humans had achieved. Dr. Sora worked with these delegations, explaining human findings. "We're not claiming to have all the answers. We're saying everyone should have the chance to seek answers. Knowledge shouldn't be locked away by those who fear what others might do with it." A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young Velthier named Rin, part of the rebel faction, managed to access the actual vault of primordials. The true vault, not the edited version the hegemony showed to the public. Rin transmitted the real contents across the galaxy before the elder Velthier could stop them. The first one's complete message was revealed. And it was nothing like what the Concordate had been told. "We who first achieved consciousness learned that the universe is not a completed work but an ongoing creation," the message began. "We shaped new physics, dreamed new laws into being. And yes, we made mistakes. Terrible mistakes that cost billions of lives. But we learned. We developed wisdom to match our power. We created protocols and safeguards. And in time we transformed not just our corner of space but began to heal the damage we had caused. We grew old, as all species must. Our time passed. But we left our knowledge encoded in the deepest level of reality, hidden from those who would only feel their way through existence. We left it for species who would seek understanding, who would ask why, who would approach the universe with curiosity rather than assumption. To whoever finds this, you are ready, not because you are perfect, but because you ask questions. The tongue of creation is not a weapon or a curse. It is a responsibility and a gift. Use it carefully. Teach it widely, and remember, you are not separate from creation. You are how the universe learns about itself. The message ended with coordinates, not to weapons or technology but to schools. The first ones had left universities throughout space, hidden facilities where any species could learn to speak the tongue of creation. The Velthir had found these locations millions of years ago and sealed them away, ensuring their monopoly on deep knowledge. High Harmonist Krell's crystalline body dimmed as the truth spread across all communication channels. The foundation of Velthir power crumbled in minutes. The younger Velthir turned against their elders. Other species demanded access to the hidden schools. Captain Day contacted Admiral Na. Stand down all defensive measures. The war is over. Did we win? Na asked. Everyone won. That's the point. The Concordat dissolved over the following weeks. Some species retreated into isolation, unwilling to adapt to a new reality. Others formed alliances based not on power but on shared curiosity. The Velthir hegemony collapsed as younger Velthir seized control and began opening the sealed schools. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the species that had been dismissed as naive children. They had proven that sometimes the most powerful question you can ask is simply, why not? 6 months after the failed attack on Earth, Ambassador Tay stood on a platform that shouldn't exist. The structure floated in neutral space, grown not through resonance or built through machinery, but created through pure mathematical manipulation of the substrate layer. It was humanity's first major demonstration of architecture through conscious reality editing. This was to be the Academy of Fundamental Sciences, the first school in modern history, where any species could learn to speak the tongue of creation. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds had already applied for admission. The age of hoarded knowledge was ending. Dr. Hana walked through the corridors of the academy with Dr. Jin beside her. They had been appointed co-deans, charged with building a curriculum that would teach the unteachable. Around them, construction continued, reality being carefully reshaped one syntax chain at a time. Are we really ready for this? Jin asked. Teaching the fundamental language of existence to anyone who wants to learn? No, Hana admitted, but we'll never be completely ready. The first ones weren't ready either. The difference is we know we're not ready, and we're planning accordingly. They entered what would become the main lecture hall. Engineer Wu was there with a team of human and alien workers fine-tuning the space. The room could shift its properties based on what was being taught. When studying time manipulation, time would flow differently in different areas. When learning about matter states, the walls themselves would demonstrate phase transitions. We've included 17 layers of safety protocols, Wu reported. Students can experiment freely, but nothing they do can propagate beyond the designated practice fields. And we have automatic rollback functions every 30 seconds. Like teaching someone to drive in a car with really good airbags, Jin said with a smile. Dr. Sora arrived with the first group of prospective instructors. They were a mix of species, including some young Velthir who had rejected their elders' secretive ways. A Victar named Thren floated beside a Morvine groundwalker named Pax. 3 humans, 2 Kirathi, and beings from a dozen other worlds. Our first faculty meeting, Hana announced. Welcome to the impossible. The meeting lasted hours. They debated teaching methods, safety protocols, and philosophical approaches. Should they teach the mathematics first or the concepts? Should students start with observation or hands-on manipulation? How do you teach someone to rewrite physics without giving them the power to accidentally break reality? We need to teach wisdom alongside technique, Thren suggested. Its energy form pulsed with different colors as it spoke. Power without understanding is dangerous, but understanding without wisdom is worse. A human professor named Yang agreed. We should include ethics courses, history of the first ones, case studies of what happens when reality manipulation goes wrong. Students need to know not just how to speak the tongue of creation, but when they should remain silent. The curriculum took shape. First-year students would learn observation, mapping the substrate layer without changing it. Second year would cover basic syntax chains, simple manipulations with extensive safety checks. Advanced students would study complex reality editing but only under close supervision. And throughout, every student would study the history, the philosophy, the responsibility. Because this knowledge wasn't just powerful, it was fundamentally universe-altering. Captain Day had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the exploration fleet tasked with finding the first one's hidden schools. With the Velthir's coordinates, they had already located 37 facilities scattered across the galaxy. Each one contained lessons, warnings, and tools for learning. At one such school, floating in a nebula that had been artificially stabilized, Day and his crew found something remarkable. The first ones hadn't just left buildings. They had left teachers, artificial intelligences, quantum consciousnesses that had survived millions of years, waiting patiently for students to arrive. I'm called Guide. The consciousness communicated directly into their minds. I was created to teach species how to speak with reality. I've been waiting a very long time. We've brought students, Day said, humans and others, all eager to learn. Good. The universe has been silent for too long. It is time for the conversation to resume. Back at the academy, the first class was about to begin. Dr. Hana stood before a mixed group of 50 students. Humans sat beside Velther. Victar floated next to Morvine. Species that had been hierarchically arranged for millions of years now sat as equals, all beginners in this new field. Welcome, Hana began. Before we start learning how to manipulate the substrate layer, I want you to understand something fundamental. Every species before humans thought the universe was fixed, something to adapt to leverage through evolved abilities. We were naive enough to ask a simple question. Why? She pulled up displays showing the mathematical patterns underlying reality. That question, that refusal to accept mystery without investigation, that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not because we're special. We're not. It's because we were willing to be students, to stumble, to question everything. A young Velthier student raised a crystalline appendage. But didn't that make you weak? While we evolved natural abilities, humans had to build machines. It made us different, Hana corrected. You were born with instincts, we had to develop understanding. But understanding has advantages, instinct doesn't. I can teach you everything I know. Can you teach someone how to instinctively manipulate resonance? The Velthier student dimmed, thoughtful. No, it's just something we feel. Exactly. Today, we're all beginners together. Forget what your species can do naturally. Here, we learn to understand. And understanding can be shared. The lesson began with simple observation. Students learned to perceive the substrate layer, to see the mathematical patterns flowing beneath ordinary reality. Some found it easy. Others struggled. But species with natural resonance abilities weren't necessarily better at this than those without. The Velthier could feel reality's flows but had trouble translating that feeling into conscious understanding. Humans couldn't feel anything special, but could map patterns with precision. In the second hour, Hana demonstrated the first syntax chain. We're going to change the color of light. This is simple, safe, and reversible. Watch carefully. She executed the mathematical sequence. A red light turned blue. The students saw not just the effect, but the cause. The precise manipulation of photon energy states through substrate commands. Now you try, Hana said. The practice field filled with lights of every color as students attempted their first reality edits. Some succeeded immediately. Others created bizarre effects. Lights that changed too fast or not at all. A few accidentally created sounds instead of color changes, their syntax chains manipulating the wrong type of wave. But no one was hurt. The safety protocols caught every mistake, rolling back failed attempts and providing feedback. Students learned not through fear of consequences, but through safe experimentation. Engineer Wu taught the practical applications course. He showed students how to use substrate manipulation in everyday life, creating zero-gravity fields for construction, generating perfectly efficient solar collectors, healing damaged ecosystems by correcting the entropy gradients that cause decay. This isn't about power, Wu explained. It's about precision. A surgeon doesn't need to be strong, they need to be accurate. Same with reality editing. Small careful changes can achieve more than dramatic ones. Dr. Jin taught the linguistic aspects, showing students how to read the grammar of creation. The substrate has tenses. Past tense describes what happened. Present describes what is. But future tense? That's conditional. It describes what could be. Master the conditional and you can write probabilities. 10 years passed. The Academy graduated its first class of reality engineers. They spread across the galaxy, bringing their knowledge to every world. Some became teachers, establishing schools on their home planets. Others became researchers, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. A few became artists, using substrate manipulation to create sculptures and performances that existed in states of pure mathematical beauty. The galaxy transformed. Technologies that had seemed impossible became routine. Diseases were cured by correcting the cellular processes at the quantum level. Energy became abundant as species learned to tap the zero-point fields efficiently. Even aging could be slowed by maintaining cellular coherence through careful syntax chains. But the most important change was cultural. The old hierarchies based on evolved abilities crumbled. Power came not from what your species could do instinctively, but from what you were willing to learn. A Velthir and a human standing before the substrate layer were equals, both students of reality's language. Dr. Hana, now elderly but still teaching, stood before a new class of students. Her hair had gone white, but her eyes still held that fierce curiosity that had driven her to unravel the universe's secrets decades earlier. Before we begin today's lesson on causal syntax structures, I want you to understand something, she said. When I first started this research, the Concordat told humanity we were too primitive, too naive, too dependent on mathematics to understand the deeper truths. They were wrong. But they were also right about one thing. We were naive. We didn't know what was impossible.